So I was in the gym the other day and I noticed something, and because I don't know any of the people at this gym, I was really paying attention to what was happening as opposed to what was being said. So I was watching, and there was this guy he was like kind of skinny. Maybe he was 150 pounds, about as tall as I am. He's like 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", somewhere around there. And then there was this really tall guy who was kind of fat. It's kind of weird. You know, fat guys usually have big legs. He had chicken legs. And the fat guy was saying to the skinny guy, he said to him, well, what do you think I should do? I've got some like issues with my knees. And the skinny guy was like, oh man, you should be on DECA. He's like, I cycle on and off of it. It's great. It's good for your joints. It's good for this, blah, blah, blah. And I was watching the fat guy listening. And I was looking at his eyes, and I was just looking in his eyes to see, like, is this guy really buying what this guy's telling him right now? And I was watching, and I could see almost like a light went off in his mind that he was like, oh, I should do DECA. And it was really fascinating. And the reason I tell this story is because, number one, the guy that was giving the advice would look exactly the same way he does if he never went to the gym. Like, he was a skinny guy. It was not like he was really well built, or he's a doctor or somebody you should actually listen to. But I was also noticing that this guy who was pretty overweight and not in great shape was really buying into what this guy was telling him, despite all of the obvious facts that this guy has no idea what he's doing, and he's not at all qualified to recommend an illegal anabolic steroid to him. And this is really the poison of society. This is what destroys more people, I think, than anything else in the world. It's not communism, it's not capitalism, it's not Christianity, it's not atheism. It is this inherent ability of human beings to ask, almost always, the advice from the wrong people. And in that guy's situation, as an example, so here's a couple of things worth considering. Number one, using anabolic steroids increases your likelihood of having a heart attack, increases the likelihood of having a stroke, increases when it comes to oral anabolic steroids, increases the chances of having liver failure and kidney failure, increases your likelihood of diabetes, increases your appetite, which means the fat guy will likely get fatter. It makes you stronger in the gym, which means it's more likely that if he already has knee problems, he might have even more because he's going to feel stronger than he would be naturally. So despite the obvious fact that this skinny guy was not the person he should listen to, I could see in his eyes he was bought in. He's like, that's what I got to do. I need to find a guy that I can get some DECA from. And this problem is pervasive through all of society. Every single one of us, myself included, I have asked the wrong people for advice before. I have asked people who do not have happy relationships about what kind of person I should date. I've asked people who didn't have that much money about money. And the problem with this is there's about, let's say you take 1,000 people. Out of 1,000 people, there's one person that's actually going to be qualified to tell you how to make more money. There's one person that's going to be able to tell you, without a doubt, what the best route is for you with regards to your health. And see, the problem is what people do is they don't know that person. So they go to somebody who's slightly better off than they are, or they perceive them as being slightly better. So this guy who's kind of fat says, well, he's skinny, he looks okay, like he's doing better than I am. This is also part of the reason why a lot of people watch Jerry Springer. They do it so they can feel better about themselves. They say, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person is. And so the question then becomes, number one, how do you find those people? How do you find the people that you should be listening to, number one? And number two, how do you get them to tell you the right thing? How do you get the right advice? And in business especially, this is like a problem with a lot of people. They're like, oh, I've got this friend, he runs a really successful business, he told me I should do this. And if you dig deeper, you're like, well, what do you mean by more successful? Oh, well, he's making, 100 grand a year. His business is doing 500 grand a year. I'm like, okay, that's not even really a small business. That's a micro business. If you look at the way businesses are classified, you're not even a medium-sized business until you're doing around 30 million a year. You're not even a large business until you're in the hundreds of millions. So who should you go to advice for? And when it comes to your physical health, that one is the easiest. I don't know why so many people get this wrong, but it's like, find the person who is in the most phenomenal shape. Like, it should almost feel like they're vibrating with energy, because it's not enough to just look good. Yeah, it's nice. You walk by a mirror, you see you've got a little six pack going on, you're like, hell yeah, man, I'm kicking ass. I got a six pack. But over the pandemic, there was a huge amount of bodybuilders, people who look like they're in perfect shape, that were dying of heart attacks left and right. It was crazy. Like, it seemed like every day I was seeing another bodybuilder died. So it's not enough to just look at somebody, how they actually look, because there's a lot of people that look like they're in amazing shape, but internally they're not. And so, number one, when it comes to your health, don't just take advice from dudes in the gym. Go to a qualified doctor, somebody who really specializes in longevity, not just in general health. Don't go to a general practitioner, go get your normal checkups and stuff, but go to somebody who their expertise is in living a really high quality life for a very long period of time, and put them to the test. And this isn't as hard as it seems, by the way. You can go on ChatGPT. What are 5 questions I should ask my doctor to make sure he's qualified to give me the absolute best health advice in the world with regards to being in great shape, having high levels of energy, living a long time, and enjoying living a long time? Because you could live a long time and not enjoy it, right? So this isn't actually that complicated. Find a doctor that specializes in longevity. I have a coach and a doctor that I work with. I'll post a link in the description below. You can talk to my coach and my doctor if you want to, or you can go somewhere else. Find somebody that specializes in longevity, because they're going to be talking to you thinking in decades. Because this body that you currently live in, as far as we know, is going to have to last you your whole life. We don't know that there's a lot of replacement parts for human beings. You blow out your legs, you blow out your back, that might be it for you. You might not have any other options. Maybe you could meditate yourself back to health, but realistically, you've got one body to live in, so you want somebody who's thinking in terms of decades. Now, the interesting thing is, the advice is actually the same in business. You want somebody who's got decades of success behind them. You don't want a friend who's got a couple of years. Maybe he got lucky. If you had bought Bitcoin a couple of years ago when it was down and now it's at 100K, was it because you were so smart, or was it because it worked out? Bitcoin could have gone to zero. Somebody could have come out and said, what's the guy from the World Economic Forum? Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab made Bitcoin to enslave human beings. Zero. Then that guy would have seemed like an idiot. So there's too much luck in short-term success. There's too many variables. When you see somebody who has decades of success behind them, they've got 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years running multi-million-dollar or even $100 million or billion-dollar businesses, it's significantly easier and it's more probable to predict that the advice they're going to give you is going to allow you to succeed in life. So how do you find these people? That was the first question, right? How do you find them? Now, here's a lot of the advice you get on business online. Go in a room, work hard, you'll figure it out. One day, if you hustle hard enough, you're going to be successful. The people who work the hardest are employees. Hands down 100%. The people who are smart and think for a living are the ones who make the most money, and they typically get paid for thinking rather than for laboring. So this is a thinking process where you say to yourself, okay, where are these highly successful people? Where did they go? What did they do? Are they out playing golf? Do I need to join a country club? Are they going to business seminars? Are they maybe speakers at business seminars? Are they people that, if I go and spend the extra $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, I can get in the same room as them? And you see, the problem is people say, well, that's too expensive. Do you think getting the wrong advice for your entire life and never getting your goals is cheaper? I think it's incredibly expensive to get the wrong advice for your whole life. Incredibly expensive. You might pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to go to a seminar and get one thing that allows you to make $1 million a year for the rest of your life. That is cheap. That is so cheap. So you have to think in terms of your whole life. You have to think in terms of decades. And when it comes to the people that you're talking to, they should be thinking in the same terms. So number one, how do you find them? You go where they go. Go to seminars. Go to nice restaurants. Hang out. I had a friend who used to go hang out at the Beverly Hills Hotel here in Beverly Hills. And I think he's 20 years old. He might not even be old enough to drink yet. And he just so happened to be going to Equinox, which is a really popular gym here. It's like $400 a month. So he was going to Equinox, and then after he was done at the gym, he would go to the Beverly Hills Hotel. One of the days that he went into the gym, this guy Peter comes in and he sees him reading the newspaper in the sauna, and he's reading the newspaper because somebody left it behind. And he starts talking to this guy, and this guy Peter is like, "Oh, what do you want to do, kid? Like, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur." And he's like, "Cool." And the next day he ran into Peter again, and Peter's like, "How's being an entrepreneur going?" He's like, "Oh, I'm still trying to figure it out." And he happened to catch him a couple of times, and Peter says to him, "Hey, would you like to go out to lunch with me? I'll take you out to lunch." Well, that Peter was Peter Thiel. And that kid, as young as he is, has more common sense than 99% of the people on the planet. It was worth it to him to spend $400 a month to go to this gym, not just to get in shape and to be healthy, but because he knew that if he was going to be able to get the right kind of advice, it was about making a small investment, about being willing to put himself out there and to do whatever he had to do to try to talk to people, to try to get to know people. And a lot of you guys are like, "Well, I'm not an extrovert, I don't really like talking to people." Tough shit. When I first got into sales, I was so fucking scared to talk to people. My knees would literally shake and my hands would sweat. And my first sales job, my manager is a 6'5", 250-pound Asian guy, probably 4% body fat. I mean, just massive. Forced me to walk around the gym at prime time, which is about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, forced me to walk around, introduce myself to every single person in the gym and shake their hand. By the end of the day, I was done being an introvert. I was like, this isn't even that scary. Most of you call yourselves introverts. What you really are is you're just fucking scared. So look, you're an adult now. If you want something in life, you have to go out and get it. It's not going to come to you. You're not going to go meditate yourself into wealth. I can guarantee it. Now, you might need to meditate to fix some of the stuff you've got going on internally so that you can go out and get wealth, but it isn't an excuse to do nothing. So you have to go where these people are. If you want to be in great shape, stop going to cheap gyms. Go to a more expensive gym where everybody's well built, they're in great shape, they can run for an hour and barely sweat. Like, go around the people that have the information that you want. It's like that movie Wall Street came out I think in the 80s or the 90s. And the guy says, information is the most valuable commodity in the world. Don't you agree? It's the truth. Having the right information will cut decades off of your life in terms of just trial and error. So when it comes to finding the people, again, you don't have to think even that hard. In fact, with ChatGPT and Google and all this other stuff, you don't even have to think. You just have to be willing to type into a computer, where do wealthy people like to spend their time? How can I meet successful business people? How can I learn how to build X kind of business? By the way, with advertising, it's even easier because there's a ton of people out there that have been very successful in business that then decided, hey, I'm going to charge people to teach them how to do the same thing. I have a mentor in real estate. He has a program. It's $5,000, or it used to be. It might be more now. And he literally teaches people how to buy land, build a house, and sell it for $100,000 or more in profit. If you Google, how do I make money building houses, his ads will show up. So the cool thing is, with modern advertising, it's even easier because there are people out there that are looking for people like you that are looking for the answer. They're looking for the system. They're looking for, how do I do this thing? How do I get in great shape? How do I make more money? How do I have better relationships? How do I have a better family? How do I just feel more fulfilled in life? What do I need to do to be happier? And so again, when it comes to, having better relationships, how many people are you hanging out with that have been married for 10, 20, 30, 40 years? And if the answer is zero, get at least one. I mean, find one person. I have a mentor just for my relationship. I watch everything he does with his wife. I only talk to him, I think, 2 or 3 times a year, but every time I can get around him, I make sure that I'm there. And I always pay, by the way. The last time I saw him, I paid $1,000. The time before that, I paid $2,000. I pay every single time. And the coolest thing is, every time I pay, something happens that I'm like, oh, that's good. Well, I'll give you a great piece of advice. He said this. He said, when I'm out in public, if I see another guy holding his wife's hand, I don't go and hold my wife's hand. I wrap my arm around my wife because I'm like, I want to be even better than that guy. That guy's got an okay relationship. I'm going to have a great relationship. And so I caught a little glimpse of this wisdom that is, don't just settle for whatever you see out there that's okay. Challenge yourself. Well, what if I could have even better than that? And they've been married, I think, for 25 years. And I watch what he does. I watch how he talks about his wife. I watch how he talks to his wife. I watch how he leads his family. I watch also, he's very successful in business. I watch how he leads his family in his company culture. Same thing with happiness. By the way, one of the dumbest things people are doing nowadays is they're like, oh, I can't have kids, they're too expensive. You want to be happy, man? I don't know anybody on this whole fucking planet that is happier than little kids. Have a bunch of kids. Trust me, you will find a way to make more money. You'll find a way to support your family. Maybe you buy less expensive bullshit that you're wasting your money on right now. Instead of spending $80,000 on a brand new car, you pay $15,000 for one that's 2 years old. Trust me when I tell you this, your quality of life is not going to go down. Get around other happy people. Watch how they think about things. When something bad happens to them, what do they say? Do they laugh it off, or do they go and cry and hide in a corner? And so your job in life is to not die by 1,000 cuts. This is what most people do to themselves. Every single day, they cut themselves just a little bit by taking the advice of people that don't know any better than what they're doing. They go on YouTube and they see somebody who's really got great, catchy videos. They're like, oh, it's so cool, they're doing this and they're doing this. And they never ask, is that actually who that person is? And this is another part of the problem, is we live in this society where we all get to see people all the time. You think they're putting their worst stuff out on YouTube? You think they're putting stuff out when they're being an asshole to their team because they don't know how to actually lead? Do you think that they're putting stuff out when they're yelling at their kids in the parking lot at the grocery store? I remember when I was in Catholic school and I was very young, I remember one time really questioning everything at the church because we'd be in church, you'd be in Mass, it's very solemn. I don't know if you've ever been to a Catholic church, it's very solemn. Everybody's quiet, praying, get on your knees, stand up, sing, praise God, amen, on your knees. It's very solemn, right? Then you leave, and there's people beating their wives in the parking lot of the church. They just came out of the house of God, right? So you need to be very, very judgmental when you see stuff on social media. Look, is this person who they really say they are? Are they actually living that kind of life, or are they just really good at making it look like they are? And it's going to be hard. You're going to have to find more than one person to mentor you, because even some of my best mentors don't have it all. I have a mentor, I listen, everything he says about money, I listen to. When he starts talking about relationships, I kind of stop paying attention. I'm like, what you're saying is interesting, but like, you don't have the relationship that I want. The guy that has the relationship I want, everything he says about relationships, I'm like, this guy knows it. When he talks about sales, I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work. I know what you're saying, and it works for guys that are selling, $500 products and people who are selling cars. It doesn't work for what I do. So you have to be judgmental in the sense that you're like, first of all, is this somebody I should actually listen to? Can I go verify this? Is there a way for me to really find out? Which means going in person, actually meeting people and observing how they actually live their lives. How do they actually talk to other people? What are they actually doing? And then also, should I be listening to this person on this specific subject? So be judgmental in the sense that you're constantly running a filter on your reality as to whether or not the information you're getting is correct. And then number two, that the person giving you that information is the right person to be giving it in the first place. And this idea of like literally every day just poisoning yourself. I don't know if you've heard this phrase like death by a thousand cuts. I don't know if they actually ever did this, but essentially like you would get tortured to death by getting cut like a little bit at a time. So you just for hours or days be basically being cut and bleeding until you died. It sounds pretty terrible, but that's actually how most people live their lives. Every time you take a piece of information from the wrong person and you put it into your life, that's another cut. Every time you listen to the wrong person, it is eroding at the potential success of every area of your life. So, number one, go out in the world. Pay for seminars, pay for coaches, pay to get access to things because it might seem like a lot of money sometimes, but if you can find one thing that allows you to be more healthy every day for the rest of your life, it's worth it. Makes you more money, it's worth it. Relationships. Everything in life is relationships. If you really think about it, you're not going to be all that successful without great relationships. You're not going to have a great life if you don't have a good friend circle. You're not going to have a good like marriage if your relationship isn't good. So you need to make sure that you're hitting all four areas, right? All four of like you could call it the four F's, right? So like your fitness, finances, family, you could say friends too, and like your fulfillment, your overall levels of happiness. But don't be one of these people that goes out in the world and you're asking your neighbor who's overweight about losing weight. They might tell you like, oh, well, I saw this thing on The View the other day and they said being a vegetarian is the way to do it. Next thing you know, you're a vegetarian and you feel like crap because you're not getting enough B vitamins. Or you're like this guy at the gym and you're taking Deca and you have a heart attack because number one, you're already overweight. Number two, it's an anabolic steroid. It's dangerous. So make sure, and I know some of the feedback people are going to give on this is, well, you know, it's not that serious, like it's not a big deal. Sometimes the wrong person has the right advice. Life is all about probabilities. Like you should really look at things from this viewpoint of how probable is it that I'm going to get the right information talking to this person. And the cool thing is, it's not that hard. I've got it in my phone. Here, I'll even show you guys this. This is a good idea for all of you. Create a list at the top of your phone of pinned people that are your mentors. I have one person in each area of my life. In a couple areas, I've got two because like I invest in real estate and I also trade in the stock market. So I've got more people than I need for each area because I want to make sure that I'm listening to the right people every day. Talk to them, send them a message. Hey man, I saw you posted on Instagram. That was really cool. I have a friend who's got a great podcast. I hit him up yesterday. I don't even listen to podcasts. I just caught a couple of clips of a podcast he did recently. I was like, dude, your podcast is crushing, man. Like, you should keep doing this. I can imagine this being huge if you keep doing what you're doing. It cost nothing, maybe 2 seconds to send a little message. I think that voice memo took me a minute. But all of that stuff, by the way, guess what that also does? It allows you to get other people coming back to you. And if you do this successfully for long enough, what ends up happening is you become, to use an analogy, you become the fountain. I had a sales trainer when I worked in the gym. He said to me, Jeremy, you're either the fountain or you're the drain. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, every time you see a fountain out in public, people gather around. In fact, it's kind of funny because we're talking about sales. He's like, people are throwing money in. They're literally throwing their money into the fountain. And he said, now you're either the fountain, or if you open the drain, people stop coming. And so you want to be the fountain. And the way to build that fountain is to first go out and get the people. Go out into the world, find these people, build relationship capital, if you want to call it that, with all these people. And eventually what happens is you've built this circle that people start wanting to bring people to you. You become the fountain instead of everyone else being the fountain for you. And ultimately, the greatest part about this is eventually this leads to you having an incredibly successful life, both in terms of your health and your money and everything else, but also it's very fulfilling because you feel like your life matters. Everybody's searching for this. That's why people dye their hair pink. That's why people dress funny. This is why people go out and they try to become successful at things. Everyone's searching for meaning. They're searching for some way to feel like all of this means something. There's a purpose to my life. I did something. That all starts with you. You have to take ultimate responsibility and say, look, I'm okay with pouring out into the world. It's like that old analogy: if you want to fill your cup, you have to empty it first. Pouring out into the world, and I'm going to keep pouring out into the world so that the world can keep pouring back into me. And so stop listening to these people. Stop watching TV, stop watching the news, stop talking to your neighbors, stop talking to your broke family about how to make money. Find the people that know what they're talking about. They have decades of success behind them in that area, and listen to everything they say. You'll have a life you can't even believe.